The sky above Nebulon 7 was no longer the deep purple the Lumizeri had known for countless generations. Now it swirled with sickly green clouds that drifted lower each day. The crystalline towers of the capital city sparkled less brightly as a thin film of the airborne pathogen settled on every surface. Chancellor Zeri stood at the window of the High Council chamber, her translucent fingers pressed against the glass. The normally vibrant blue glow of her crystalline body had dulled in recent weeks, a sign the disease was affecting her too. "The latest reports are here, Chancellor," said Merrick, her chief science advisor. His voice cracked from the strain on his vocal crystals. "Another 12,000 cases since yesterday. The southern continent is now reporting 50% infection rates." Zeri turned from the window. The 7 members of the High Council sat at the circular table, each looking worse than the day before. Their species' natural luminescence was fading across the planet. "How long do we have?" Zeri asked. Merrick looked down at his data tablet. "At current progression rates, total population infection within 4 months." And then, he didn't need to finish. They all knew what followed infection. Council member Talus, once the brightest light in any room, now barely glowed at all. "The Corvan Empire denies any involvement, but our intelligence confirms they released this engineered pathogen. They want our world for mining, and decided removing us was easier than negotiation." "The evacuation ships?" asked Zeri, though she already knew the answer. "We can save perhaps 1% of our population," said Council member Jory. "The children, mostly. But there's nowhere to take them that won't risk spreading the contagion." The room fell silent. Outside, the green mist swirled against the window. "We must try one more time," Zeri finally said. "The Galactic Concord cannot simply watch a civilization die." "We've sent 16 formal requests," said Talus. "The Atraxians claim it's an internal sector matter. The Voldorians say sending help might be seen as taking sides in what they call a regional dispute. The Centauri cite non-intervention protocols." Zeri's inner light flashed briefly with anger. "Then we will make them hear us. Prepare the deep space transmitter. We will broadcast on all frequencies to every corner of the galaxy." 2 hours later, Zeri stood in the planetary broadcast center. Technicians made final adjustments to equipment that would send their message farther than any previous Lumizeri transmission. "We're ready, Chancellor," said the lead technician. "This will drain 30% of our remaining power reserves." Zeri nodded. "Begin." The technician handed her a small crystal microphone. A red light blinked, indicating they were now broadcasting. "This is Chancellor Zeri of the Lumizeri High Council on Nebulon 7. We face extinction. An engineered pathogen, released by the Corvan Empire, is spreading through our atmosphere. It will kill our entire species within months. We have tried all solutions within our power. We have appealed to the Galactic Concord for aid and been ignored." Zeri paused, fighting to keep her voice steady. "This is not a request for military intervention. This is not about politics. This is about life. We need medical and scientific assistance to combat this pathogen before it's too late. We can provide all data on the contagion to any who will help. We have children, artists, historians, scientists, 4 billion souls who want to live." A tear of liquid crystal ran down her face, catching the light. "If anyone can hear us, if anyone still believes life is sacred regardless of species or alliance, please help us. The Lumizeri have much to offer the galaxy. We do not wish our light to go out. We will compensate any who assist us, but we simply ask, do not let us die when you have the power to save us." The red light continued to blink as the message repeated, broadcasting in all known galactic languages. It would continue until the power reserves were drained. On the streets below, the Lumizeri went about their business, unaware that their fate now rested on whether anyone in the vast, cold galaxy would answer their cry for help. Days passed, then weeks. The green clouds descended lower. The Lumizeri grew dimmer, and their message traveled outward, passing the grand ships of the Concord races who heard but chose not to respond, traveling farther, to the edges of explored space, where a small blue-green planet had just activated its first experimental deep space quantum receiver. 6 weeks after sending their message into the depths of space, the Lumizeri had nearly given up hope. The green fog now filled the streets of their cities. Half their population showed symptoms of the pathogen. The once brilliant crystal towers were dim and clouded. Chancellor Zeri sat in the medical wing of the government complex, watching as doctors treated the latest victims. Her own light flickered weakly, her energy fading. The door burst open and Merrick rushed in, his crystals pulsing with more energy than Zeri had seen in weeks. "Chancellor, you must come to the observatory immediately." "What is it?" Zeri asked, barely finding the strength to stand. "A ship," Merrick said, his voice trembling. "An unknown ship is approaching our orbit." Hope was dangerous now, but Zeri felt it spark within her core. Together, they hurried to the Planetary Defense Center, where the monitoring stations tracked all space traffic. On the main screen, an unfamiliar vessel approached Nebulon 7. It was smaller than any Concorde ship, with odd angles and visible thrusters. Not sleek like Atraxian vessels, or geometrically perfect like Centauri craft. "It matches no known design in our database," said the defense officer. "It's broadcasting a message on our frequency." "Play it," ordered Zeri. A voice came through, speaking in slightly accented but understandable Galactic Standard. "Nebulon 7, this is Captain Alan Wells of the Earth vessel U.S. Horizon. We received your distress call. We're here to help if we can." The room fell silent. Earth, a name barely known to the Lumizeri. A distant planet considered primitive by Concorde standards, not even on their contact list. "Respond," Zeri commanded, her voice stronger now. "Earth vessel, this is Nebulon 7 Defense Control. Your assistance is unexpected." "We understand," replied Captain Wells. "Request permission to enter orbit and send a shuttle to your surface. We have medical personnel on board." 2 hours later, Zeri and the Council waited in the landing bay as the Earth shuttle touched down. The craft looked rudimentary compared to Concorde technology, with visible welding lines and practical rather than elegant design. The door opened, and for the first time, the Lumizeri saw humans. Captain Alan Wells stepped out first. He was tall for his species, with short gray hair and lines around his eyes that suggested both laughter and worry. Behind him came a woman with dark skin and curly black hair tied back tightly. "Chancellor Zeri?" Captain Wells asked, looking at each council member unsurely. Zeri stepped forward, her crystalline form casting weak light. "I am Zeri. How did you find us, Captain Wells?" The Concorde races ignored our plea. Wells smiled slightly. "Earth isn't part of your Concorde. We were testing our first experimental quantum receiver when we picked up your signal. It took us nearly 3 weeks to decode it, and another 3 to get here." The woman stepped forward. "I'm Dr. Olivia Green, Chief Medical Officer. We need to understand what we're dealing with as quickly as possible." "You came all this way without knowing if you could help?" asked Council Member Tallis. Captain Wells shrugged. "You needed help. We had to try." More humans exited the shuttle. A man with equipment strapped to his body approached cautiously. "Frank Morgan, Communications," he introduced himself. "With your permission, I'd like to establish a direct link with our ship to speed up information exchange." As the humans set up their equipment and Dr. Green began collecting pathogen samples, Merrick leaned close to Zeri. "They're so primitive," he whispered. "Their technology is decades behind the Concorde." "Yes," Zeri replied, watching as the humans worked with focused efficiency. "But they came. The advanced races did not." Dr. Green approached with a scanning device. "This pathogen is artificial, engineered specifically to target your biological structure." "Who would do this?" "The Corvin Empire," said Zeri. "They want our planet." Captain Wells's expression hardened. biological warfare against civilians. This is a crime on Earth. The Concord has laws against it too, said Tallis bitterly. But they do nothing. Wells and Dr. Green exchanged glances. Chancellor, said Captain Wells, I need to contact Earth immediately. If this pathogen is artificial, we might be able to engineer a counteragent, but we'll need more resources than just our ship. For the first time in months, Zeri felt her inner light grow brighter. You believe you can help us? I don't know, Wells said honestly, but Earth won't stand by while an entire civilization dies. That's not who we are. As the humans returned to their shuttle to make contact with Earth, the Lumizari Council watched in wonder. Help had come from the most unexpected place, a young species they hadn't even considered worth contacting. 3 days after the U.S. Horizon arrived at Nebulon 7, strange things began happening in the skies above the dying planet. First came a flash of light, then another and another. The Lumizari people looked up through the green haze to see 3 more human ships appear in orbit. In the High Council chamber, Captain Wells stood before a display showing the new arrivals. The U.S. Nightingale is our best medical research vessel, he explained, and those 2 support ships carry atmospheric processing equipment and supplies. Chancellor Zeri's glow had strengthened slightly with the presence of hope. Your people responded so quickly. When Earth heard what was happening here, there was no debate. Wells said. Director Grace Harrison of United Space Command authorized Operation Lifeline immediately. Frank Morgan, who had barely slept since their arrival as he worked to establish communication systems, looked up from his console. Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the Corvin Empire. Wells frowned. Put it through. The screen changed to show a purple-skinned being with multiple eye stalks. This is Commander Vroll of the Corvin Military Council. Earth vessels are ordered to withdraw from Nebulon 7 immediately. You are interfering in matters beyond your understanding. Captain Wells stepped forward. This is Captain Alan Wells of Earth. We're responding to a humanitarian crisis. We have no quarrel with the Corvin Empire. Your presence violates Concord non-intervention statutes, hissed Commander Vroll. The Concord has been notified of your illegal actions. The transmission cut off abruptly. Wells turned to Zeri. What did he mean by non-intervention statutes? The Concord has rules about interfering in conflicts between civilizations, Zeri explained. They use these rules when it suits them. When it doesn't, her light dimmed momentarily. Hours later, a shuttle from the U.S. Nightingale landed at the government complex. A man with silver-streaked black hair and tired eyes stepped out, carrying several cases of equipment. Dr. Peter Blackwell, he introduced himself to Zeri and the Council. Earth's leading virologist. I've been studying the samples Dr. Green sent back. We need to move quickly. In a laboratory cleared for the human medical team, Dr. Blackwell unpacked specialized equipment as he explained his findings. This pathogen wasn't just engineered, he said, projecting microscopic images onto a screen. It was specifically designed to attack the crystalline structure that makes up Lumizari biology. See these markers here. This is deliberate genocide. The Corvins deny responsibility, said Council Member Tallis. They're lying, Dr. Blackwell said flatly. This level of bioengineering requires advanced knowledge of the target species. It's not just criminal, it's monstrous. A young human woman with short blonde hair rushed into the lab. Dr. Blackwell, Captain Wells needs you in the command center immediately. In the command center, a new face filled the main screen. The blue-skinned alien with elaborate head ridges spoke in precise, measured tones. I am Ambassador Thrix of the Atraxian Collective, representing the Galactic Concord. Earth vessels are in violation of Statute 5529 regarding interference in regional conflicts. You will withdraw immediately or face sanctions. Captain Wells stood his ground. Ambassador, we're responding to a humanitarian crisis. The Lumizari are victims of a bioweapon, which violates your own Concord laws. The Concord will investigate these claims at the appropriate time. Ambassador Thrix replied coldly. Earth is not a Concord member and has no authority to involve itself in these matters. A new voice joined the conversation. I am Director Grace Harrison of Earth's United Space Command. The screen split to show a stern-faced woman with gray hair. Ambassador Thrix, Earth may not be part of your Concord, but we understand right from wrong. The evidence of illegal biological warfare is clear. While you debate the appropriate time to help, an entire civilization is dying. We will not withdraw. Ambassador Thrix's face showed a hint of surprise. This is most irregular. Concord protocols clearly state. We didn't sign your protocols, Harrison interrupted. And while you hide behind paperwork, we'll be saving lives. Harrison out. The screen went dark. Captain Wells looked around the room at the shocked faces of the Lumizari Council. I apologize for the diplomatic tension, he said, but Dr. Blackwell believes we can develop a countermeasure to the pathogen. We need time. The Corvins will not allow this, warned Merrick, and now the Concord is involved. Dr. Blackwell stepped forward. Then we'll have to work faster. The U.S. Nightingale is already setting up atmospheric analysis equipment. We need to understand how the pathogen spreads through your environment. As the humans rushed back to their tasks, Zuri watched them with growing wonder. These creatures, so new to space travel that they still used primitive rocket thrusters, were risking interstellar censure to save people they had never met before. Why? She asked Captain Wells before he left. Why risk so much for us? Wells paused at the door. Because someone should, he said simply. On the 5th day after the human fleet arrived, engineer Laura Miller stood on the roof of the tallest building in the Lumizari capital city. The green cloud swirled above her head as she adjusted controls on a large machine she had built overnight. This atmospheric scrubber won't cure the pathogen, she explained to Merrick, who watched in fascination. But it should slow its spread in this area. We need to buy Dr. Blackwell more time. Merrick tilted his crystalline head. You built this from parts on your ship. Laura laughed. Some parts from our ship, some from your factories, and some I had to improvise. Not pretty, but it works. In the government complex below, Dr. Blackwell hadn't slept in 30 hours. He stared at screens filled with data as Dr. Green handed him another cup of coffee. The pathogen bonds to the silicon-carbon matrix of Lumizari biology, he muttered. If we can create a compound that blocks these receptor sites. In the communications center, young Officer Jack Rivera worked alongside Lumizari technicians to strengthen their planetary shields. His fingers flew over unfamiliar controls as he integrated human defensive systems with the alien technology. Your shield generators are twice as powerful as ours, he said, but the modulation patterns are vulnerable to targeted disruption. If we randomize the frequency. A Lumizari technician named Zell watched him with bright interest. Your species has only been in space for 30 years. 32, Jack corrected with a smile. We're quick learners. In orbit above, Captain Wells received troubling news from the U.S. Horizon sensors. 6 Corvin warships just entered the system, reported his first officer, and 3 Concord vessels behind them. Wells nodded grimly. Alert Director Harrison, and get me Chancellor Zeri. In the council chamber, Zeri met with Captain Wells and his officers. Though still weak, more Lumizari were present now, watching the humans with curious eyes. The Corvins are coming to finish what they started, Wells explained, and the Concord ships are supposedly coming to maintain galactic security protocols. They're coming to stop you from helping us, said Council Member Tallis, her glow stronger than it had been in weeks. They don't want to admit they were wrong to ignore our pleas. I don't understand, said a young Lumizari scientist. Why are humans doing this? You have no mining interests here. No strategic position to gain. You're risking war with species far more advanced than yourselves. The room grew quiet. All eyes turned to Captain Wells. Where I come from, he said slowly, if someone yells for help, you help them. It's that simple. But the risk, began the scientist. Would you have helped us? Wells asked. If our positions were reversed? The scientist's glow brightened. Yes, of course. Then we understand each other, Wells said with a smile. Dr. Blackwell burst into the room, his face flushed with excitement. We've found something. The pathogen has a design flaw. Its molecular structure includes a vulnerability, a protein sequence that self-replicates too aggressively. What does that mean? Asked Ziri. It means we might be able to turn the pathogen against itself, create a counteragent that triggers premature breakdown. He held up a datapad. But we'll need to distribute it throughout your atmosphere simultaneously. Laura Miller stepped forward. We could modify my scrubbers into distribution nodes, place them at key points around the planet. How many would we need? Asked Wells. At least 30, Laura said. And we'd need to deploy them within hours of each other. We have resources for perhaps 10, said Captain Wells. The rest of our equipment is needed to maintain our ship's functions. The room fell silent again. Then, one by one, the Lumizari began to speak up. Our southern mining facility has atmospheric processors that could be converted, said one. The Western Science Institute has chemical synthesizers, offered another. My family's transportation business has ships that could distribute the devices, said a third. As the Lumizari began organizing themselves, offering resources and volunteers, Captain Wells stepped back to stand beside Ziri. Your people are remarkable, he said quietly. Even at the edge of extinction, they haven't given up. We had given up, Ziri corrected him. Until you came. You've shown us it's worth fighting, even when the odds seem impossible. Above them, the Corvin warships drew closer. The Concorde vessels moved to intercept the human fleet. And on Nebulon 7, a dying species and their unexpected saviors raced against time. A great silver ship, 3 times larger than any human vessel, dropped out of faster-than-light travel and took position near Nebulon 7. Its smooth hull bore the spiral emblem of the Galactic Concorde. 6 smaller escort ships surrounded it in perfect formation. On the bridge of the U.S. horizon, Captain Wells watched the display with concern. That's the Concorde diplomatic flagship, said Frank Morgan, checking his instruments. They're hailing us. Wells straightened his uniform, put them through. The screen lit up to show a tall, slender Atraxian with elaborate facial markings that indicated high rank. I am Ambassador Thrix of the Atraxian Collective, senior diplomatic representative of the Galactic Concorde. Captain Wells, you and your vessels are ordered to depart Nebulon 7 immediately. Wells kept his expression neutral. Ambassador, we're in the middle of providing humanitarian aid to the Lumizari. Dr. Blackwell is close to developing a cure for the pathogen. The Concorde will handle this matter according to established protocols. Thrix replied. Your presence is disruptive and unauthorized. I demand to speak with your superiors. I'll arrange that, Wells said. But first, I'd like to invite you to see our work firsthand. Meet with Chancellor Ziri. Examine our evidence about the Corvin bioweapon. There was a long pause before Thrix responded. Very well. I will send a delegation. 4 hours later, Ambassador Thrix and 3 other Concorde representatives stood in the Lumizari government complex. Their tall forms towered over the humans and Lumizari. They looked around with expressions of mild distaste. Stephanie Boyd, a diplomatic officer who had arrived on the U.S. Nightingale, stepped forward. She was a small woman with keen eyes and a calm voice. Ambassador, thank you for coming. Chancellor Ziri will join us shortly. In the meantime, Dr. Blackwell would like to present his findings. Dr. Blackwell displayed his data on large screens. The pathogen attacking the Lumizari contains synthetic molecular structures that could only be created in advanced laboratories. Its targeting mechanism is specifically engineered to attack Lumizari biology. These are serious claims, said one of the Concorde officials, a Centauri with metallic skin. They're facts, Dr. Blackwell corrected. This is a bioweapon, and using it violates Concorde law. Section 15.3 on prohibited weapons. Ambassador Thrix frowned. The Corvin Empire denies these allegations. Without a formal investigation by Concord scientists, which would take several months to organize, we cannot verify your claims. Several months. Laura Miller burst out. The Lumizarid don't have several months. Chancellor Zeri entered the room, her glow noticeably stronger thanks to treatments developed by Dr. Green. Several council members accompanied her. Ambassador Thrix, she said. We requested help from the Concord 6 times before broadcasting our plea to the galaxy. What was your response then? Thrix shifted uncomfortably. The Concord must consider many factors when. You did nothing, Zeri interrupted. And now you want to stop the only people who came to our aid. Less developed species shouldn't interfere in complex galactic matters, Frick said, glancing at the humans. They lack the perspective to understand the delicate balance of interstellar relations. Stephanie Boyd stepped forward, her expression calm but her eyes intense. Ambassador, on Earth we have a concept called moral obligation. When someone is drowning, you don't form a committee to discuss whether saving them might upset the political balance. You jump in and pull them out. A simplistic view, said Thrix dismissively. Is it? Boyd asked. The Lumizeri are dying. We can help them. That's not politics. That's basic decency. The room fell silent. Even the other Concord representatives looked uncomfortable. Ambassador Thrix glared at Boyd. You presumed to lecture me on galactic ethics. Your species was launching chemical rockets when I was negotiating the Treaty of Vega Prime. Maybe that's why we still remember what matters, Boyd replied quietly. Before Thrix could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the complex. Frank Morgan's voice came over the communication system. Captain Wells, the Corvin warships are powering weapons. They're targeting our vessels and the Lumizeri planetary defense grid. Wells turned to Ambassador Thrix. Still want to take months for that investigation. Thrix seemed genuinely shocked. The Corvins wouldn't dare attack with Concord ships present. This violates all protocols. As the diplomatic party rushed to the command center, a young Centauri officer pulled Stephanie Boyd aside. Not all of us agree with the ambassador, he whispered. Some of us have been watching your efforts here. We've prepared data packets about Corvin bioweapon facilities that might help your Dr. Blackwell. He pressed a small data crystal into her hand, then hurried away to rejoin his delegation. Boyd stared at the crystal, then smiled slightly. Perhaps the humans weren't as alone as they thought. The command center of the Lumizeri government complex was filled with frantic activity. On the main screen, 6 Corvin warships moved into attack formation. Humans and Lumizari worked side by side at control stations, while Ambassador Thrix and his Concord delegation watched in disbelief. They cannot do this, Thrix insisted. Attack while Concord ships are present. It's unprecedented. Apparently, they don't respect your protocols as much as you thought, Captain Wells said grimly. He turned to his communications officer. Morgan, warn our ships to prepare defensive measures, but do not fire first. Dr. Blackwell burst into the room, clutching a datapad. His eyes were red from lack of sleep, but his face showed excitement. It worked, he exclaimed. The data from the Centauri officer contained the exact molecular structure of the pathogen. We've created a neutralizing agent that can break down the pathogen's core structure. Laura Miller looked up from her station. The distribution system is ready. We have 28 modified atmospheric scrubbers positioned around the planet. Once activated, they'll release the agent into the upper atmosphere. How long until it takes effect? Asked Chancellor Zeri. 6 to 8 hours for the agent to fully disperse, Dr. Blackwell explained. Another 12 to 24 hours to neutralize the pathogen. We may not have that long, said Wells, pointing to the screen. The Corvins are moving into firing position. Ambassador Thrix stepped forward. This is Ambassador Thrix of the Galactic Concord. Contact the Corvin fleet immediately. When the Corvin commander appeared on screen, his multiple eye stalks quivered with anger. Ambassador, this does not concern the Concord. The humans are interfering with our legitimate territorial expansion by using an illegal bioweapon, Wells challenged. A natural disease, the Corvin commander insisted, but one that conveniently makes this world available for mining. Withdraw your ships, ordered Thrix. The Concord will investigate these allegations properly. Your investigations take too long, Ambassador, the Corvin replied. We prefer direct action. The screen went dark, and seconds later, the Corvin ships opened fire. Energy beams struck the U.S. horizon, causing the ship to shudder under the impact. Shields holding at 60%, reported Morgan. Ambassador Thrix's face showed genuine shock. This is an outrage. They dare to. His words were cut short as everyone stared at the screen in amazement. 2 Concord vessels had moved between the Corvin warships and the human fleet, their advanced shields absorbing the Corvin fire. A new voice came over the communication system. This is Commander Izar of the Centauri Defense Force. The actions of the Corvin Empire violate multiple Concord laws. We will provide protection while the cure is deployed. One of Thrix's aides whispered urgently in his ear. The ambassador's expression changed from outrage to confusion. 3 more Concord ships have broken formation, Morgan reported. They're taking defensive positions around our medical vessel. Not all of us have forgotten our purpose, Ambassador, Commander Izar said. The Concord was founded to protect life, not protocols. A violent explosion rocked the complex as Corvin forces began attacking the planet directly. They're targeting our distribution centers, Laura shouted. Captain Wells made a quick decision. Dr. Blackwell, we need to deploy the cure now, even if the system isn't fully ready. But the coverage will be incomplete, Blackwell protested. Better than nothing if they destroy our equipment, Wells replied. Outside the command center, the sky filled with weapons fire as Concord and Corvin ships engaged each other. The U.S. Horizon took several direct hits, its shields flaring under the assault. Horizon reports critical damage to engines and life support, Morgan said gravely. Wells nodded. Tell them to abandon ship if necessary, but keep the distribution system online as long as possible. Engineer Kevin Hayes rushed to Laura Miller's side. The central distribution node is down. We need to manually activate the atmospheric dispersal system. That would require someone to fly directly into the combat zone, Laura said. A tall woman with short brown hair stepped forward. I can do it. I'm a shuttle pilot. Susan Taylor, Wells said, recognizing her. It's too dangerous. Susan's expression was determined. No more dangerous than what the Lumizari face if we do nothing, sir. Without waiting for further discussion, she ran toward the landing bay. Minutes later, a small human shuttle lifted off, weaving through weapons fire toward the upper atmosphere. On the main screen, everyone watched as the tiny craft dodged energy beams, climbing higher and higher toward the green clouds that had been killing the Lumizari for months. She's reached the dispersion altitude, Kevin reported. Neutralizing agent releasing now. A silent, silver cloud began spreading from the shuttle, expanding outward into the green poison that covered the planet. Then a Corvin beam struck the small craft, sending it spinning out of control. But it was too late for the Corvins to stop what had begun. The cure was deployed. Susan Taylor's damaged shuttle tumbled through Nebulon 7's atmosphere, trailing smoke. In the command center, everyone watched in horror as the small craft spun out of control. Can we lock on with a tractor beam? Captain Wells asked urgently. Morgan shook his head. Too much interference from the combat. I've got contact with her comm system, Jack Rivera called out. Shuttle Taylor, do you read us? Susan's strained voice came through the speakers. I read you. Stabilizers gone. Controls barely responding. Despite her situation, her voice remained calm. But the neutralizing agent deployed successfully. Tell Dr. Blackwell his cure is in the atmosphere. A beam from a Corvin ship struck near the command center, shaking the building. Susan, try to aim for the lake in the western province, Laura Miller suggested. The water might cushion your landing. "Working on it," Susan replied. "But I'd really appreciate if someone could tell those Corvins to stop shooting at me." As if in answer to her request, 2 Concorde fighters swooped down, positioning themselves between the falling shuttle and the Corvin attackers. They fired precision shots that disabled the Corvin weapon systems without destroying the ships. High above, the space battle shifted dramatically. 4 more Concorde vessels had broken ranks to protect the human ships. Commander Izar's voice echoed through the communication system as he addressed not just those in the command center, but all ships in orbit. The Concorde was founded to preserve life and promote cooperation among spacefaring species, he declared. Today we have failed in that mission. But these humans, new to the stars, remind us of our purpose. On the main view screen, they watched as Susan's shuttle made a rough but controlled crash into the lake. Moments later, a small figure emerged, swimming toward the shore. "Pilot Taylor is alive," Morgan reported, relief evident in his voice. Above them, the remaining Corvin ships began to retreat, faced with the combined force of human vessels and rebel Concorde ships. The immediate danger had passed. Dr. Blackwell was monitoring atmospheric readings with intense focus. "The neutralizing agent is dispersing precisely as calculated," he announced. "The green clouds are already showing molecular breakdown in the upper atmosphere." Chancellor Zeri stepped to the center of the room, her crystalline form glowing brighter than it had in months. "How soon will we know if it's working?" "The air should begin clearing within hours," Dr. Blackwell explained. "But the full effect on your people's health will take days to assess." Ambassador Thrix had been unusually quiet during the battle. Now he stepped forward, his tall form rigid with what might have been anger or embarrassment. "The actions of Commander Izar and the other Concorde ships will be reviewed by the High Council," he said stiffly. "Such breaches of protocol cannot be tolerated." Stephanie Boyd faced him directly. "Ambassador, perhaps the protocols themselves should be reviewed instead. When rules prevent you from doing what's right, maybe the rules are wrong." Fricks had no immediate response. 3 days later, the skies above Nebulon 7 began to clear. The sickly green clouds thinned and dispersed, revealing patches of the planet's natural purple sky. In hospitals across the planet, Lou, Missouri patients showed signs of recovery as their crystalline bodies purged the pathogen. In orbit, the situation had grown more complex. 23 Concorde ships now surrounded the planet, some supporting Commander Izar, others loyal to traditional Concorde leadership. Messages flew back and forth between Concorde homeworlds as news of the Nebulon incident spread. On Earth, Director Harrison addressed the United Space Command Council. Screens around the room showed images from Nebulon 7, humans and Lumazari working side by side, the atmospheric scrubbers clearing the poison from the air, children whose natural glow was returning. "We've received communications from 17 previously unknown species," Harrison reported, "all expressing interest in direct relations with Earth, outside Concorde channels." One council member looked troubled. "We've upset the balance of power in this sector. The Concorde has maintained peace for centuries." "Perhaps," Harrison agreed. "But at what cost? A peace that allows genocide isn't peace at all." She activated another screen, showing a message from Chancellor Zeri. "The Lumazari are inviting representatives from Earth and other worlds to discuss a new type of interstellar association, one based on mutual aid rather than political advantage." In Nebulon 7's capital city, Captain Wells stood with Zeri on a balcony overlooking the plaza. Below them, Lumazari children played in the sunlight, their bodies sparkling as they should. Human medical teams continued to treat the sick, but more and more beds were empty each day as patients recovered. "Your people saved us," Zeri said simply. "We will never forget." Wells smiled. "We just answered your call. Anyone would have done the same." Zeri's light pulsed gently. "But they didn't. Only humanity heard our cry." 6 months after the cure was deployed, Nebulon 7 hosted the largest gathering of different alien species in recent galactic history. The crystalline towers of the capital gleamed in the purple light of their sun, fully restored to their former beauty. In the grand plaza at the center of the city, representatives from 17 spacefaring civilizations assembled on a circular platform. Chancellor Zeri stood at the center, her form glowing brilliantly. Beside her stood Alan Wells, now Admiral Wells, representing Earth. The human had received his promotion after returning home a hero. "Welcome to the first Concordat Assembly," Zeri announced, her voice carrying across the plaza. "6 months ago, our civilization faced extinction. We sent our plea across the stars, and only one world answered: Earth." The crowd murmured. Many of the delegates looked uncomfortably at the floor. "But today is not about blame," Zeri continued. "It is about building something new, something better." Among the delegates were Commander Izar and other Centauri who had broken with the old Concord. There were representatives from worlds that had never joined the Concord, seeing its flaws from a distance. Most surprising were delegates from 5 species no one had heard from in decades, civilizations that had withdrawn from galactic affairs after becoming disillusioned with Concord politics. "The old Concord still exists," Zeri said, "but many of us believe its founding purpose has been lost in bureaucracy and political maneuvering. Today we propose the Galactic Concordat of Mutual Protection, an alliance based not on power or technology, but on a simple principle: when someone calls for help, we answer." Admiral Wells stepped forward. Earth's blue and green flag was displayed alongside the crystalline emblem of Nebulon 7. "Humanity is young in space travel," he said. "We have much to learn from all of you, but perhaps we also have something to offer. A reminder of why we reach for the stars in the first place. Not just for resources or territory, but to connect with others, to grow, to help when we can." The delegates broke into discussion groups that lasted 3 days. There were arguments, compromises, moments of tension, and unexpected alliance. In the end, 15 species signed the founding charter of the new Concordat. 2 others promised to return with their government's decisions. The signing ceremony took place in the same room where, months before, the Lumizari Council had despaired as their people died around them. Now it was filled with light and hope. As the Earth delegation prepared to return home, Chancellor Zeri led them to a small garden where a monument had been erected. It was a crystal spire that caught the light and split it into 1,000 rainbow beams. At its base, words were carved in multiple languages, including English. "When we pleaded for help, humanity heard our cry. May we all listen as clearly in the days to come." Dr. Olivia Green wiped away a tear as she read the inscription. Beside her, Frank Morgan and Jack Rivera stood solemnly. Susan Taylor, fully recovered from her crash, touched the monument gently. "I was just doing my job," she said quietly. "You were doing what was right," Zeri corrected. "That is what this monument celebrates, not just Earth's technology or bravery, but your moral clarity." Back on Earth, the story of Nebulon 7 was being taught in schools. Children learned about the Lumizari, about the pathogen, about Susan Taylor's brave flight. They debated the ethics of intervention versus non-interference. They asked difficult questions about responsibility to others versus protecting one's own interests. In space stations and colonies throughout Earth's growing territory, training now included Nebulon protocols, procedures for responding to distress calls from unknown sources. 6 years later, when a small Earth colony on a distant moon faced destruction from a meteor storm, 3 Lumizari ships were the first to arrive with equipment that could deflect the meteors. Their captain sent a simple message: "You heard us when we called. We hear you now." Across the galaxy, the old Concord continued, still powerful but diminished. More species left each year to join the Concordat. The Corvan Empire, facing sanctions and isolation, eventually requested membership in the new alliance, agreeing to reparations and disarmament. And when new species achieved spaceflight and sent their first signals into the dark, they now received a unified response, a welcome, and a promise. In this galaxy, no cry for help would go unanswered again.